Hello and welcome to Lenric's Realm. I am Matt, and in this video we are going to face the darkness. When getting back into the hobby, I made some interesting observations. A lot of people in the miniature sphere seem to have a passion for dark and harsh themes. I myself feel drawn to the Blanchitsu style of miniature painting that I find especially interesting in the modern Mordheim community. A trend that on further consideration extends to fantasy media in general, which begs the question, what makes darkness in fantasy so attractive? I think these genre frames provide in a way a softer lens to experience uncomfortable or complex themes. The horrors of war, which find their way into the Lord of the Rings, societal problems of inequality that are ever present in the Witcher books, or the melancholy that is a constant throughout the Dark Souls franchise. My return to the hobby was influenced by several key factors. One of those was a sudden recommendation of a video about building a ruined tower by a well-known channel called, Black Magic Craft. You could argue that watching this and of course other videos by similar creators started the resurgence of my long-lost hobby. And for that, I give you my sincerest thank you. Now, if you followed the miniature YouTube scene in the last couple of days, you probably can guess where this is going. Well, of course, I want to talk about Idols of Torment, the new game by Black Magic Craft's Jeremy. Now, this is not sponsored or anything like that. I'm just genuinely intrigued by this game and the art direction. Especially when you like the macabre and melancholic style of the aforementioned Blanchitsu style. There is also a very interesting aspect in the lore of the orders which I really appreciate. When you see this video shortly after its release, you will still be able to pledge via Kickstarter. And if you're interested, you'll find the link down below. Now, inspired by that, I wanted to build a fitting terrain piece, something that could be seen as a religious or cult-like symbol that feels creepy and a bit weird, but also would fit in a game of Dungeons & Dragons or Warhammer. As a starting point, I had this papier-mâché mask. Now, at that point, I didn't have a finished product in my head, so I just cut out the base and glued the mask on it via hot glue. If you're curious what I use as a base, this is PVC foam board. This is way stronger than normal foam board and is way easier to cut than normal PVC board. Almost like the best of both worlds. But the most important thing is, this stuff isn't prone to warping like cardboard. I really don't want to have my new piece wobbling around on the battlefield. That is not very dark. Still, I wasn't quite sure what to do with the open end on the top of the face, so I proceeded with the eyes. I glued a piece of cardboard to the back of the mask to reduce the depth of the eyes. I also used kitchen paper with PVA to close the gaps between the elevated platform and the eyes. When that was dry, I was again confronted with the region on top of the face. First, I wanted to make something of a cave entrance or maybe an artificial wall with a door. But the idea of a hobbit home with a face as a roof didn't really excite me, so I tried something else. Instead of providing a way down, I went the other direction. As I already said, I imagined this place as a twisted religious site, and what is more religious than a place of worship? So I went for a platform with an altar. There, shady figures would hold strange rituals, offer sacrifices, or play with puzzle boxes. I built the underlying structure with cardboard pieces. Also, I added a stair leading to the top because I don't think that cultists are very athletic. After that, I cut some bricks with my foam cutter. It's not essential, but hot wire cutters makes it much easier cutting bricks in bulk. Alternatively, you can use a normal cutting knife for this as well, just make sure you use fresh blades or you will risk tearing the foam. Then I put the bricks into a can with a bunch of stones. Shaking that can textured all the bricks inside and rounded the edges a bit. This way they looked a bit more natural. I think you can guess where I learned that method. These bricks I glued to the cardboard structure, which honestly took a bit of time. I tried to get an uneven look with the brickwork so that this piece would fit right beside my rune set that I printed out a while ago. I also cut the bricks somewhat in the middle because they were simply too thick to be arranged nicely on the structure. This had the added benefit of giving me bricks of varying thickness that made the brickwork even more uneven. For the platform, I cut bigger pieces of foam so they would look like stone tiles. These were also glued in place with PVA. Now, while I waited for this to dry, I added a few bark chips to act as a transition between the PVC base and the papier-mâché mask. In my head, this face is made of stone, and although I wanted most of it smooth, I still wanted a hint of rock surface on the sides. With air drying clay, I made a smooth transition between the bark and the paper surface of the mask. I also sealed the bark chips with a PVA and water mix. As the next step, I made a simple texture base out of tile grout, water, PVA and a bit of grey paint. With that I covered everything that would be stone or rock, which basically meant the whole piece. While working on this project, I suddenly had this image of bloody tears flowing from the eyes in my head. However, I did not want anything that would be unmistakably evil on this piece. A bloody pool in the eyes would be pretty clearly not a good sign. So I came up with this idea that the eye sockets would feature a bunch of red candles that after burning down would result in wax flowing down on the side of the eyes, just like tears of blood. And for that I needed candles. I never made candles before, and at first I wasn't quite sure how to craft them. My approach, however, would prove to be pretty straightforward. I took toothpicks, cut them to size and poked a small hole on one side. In this hole I stuck a piece of wire and glued that in place with superglue. This in itself is a pretty fast process, but as I said, I needed a lot of candles. When I was comfortable with the amount of candles, I dropped a bit of hot glue on a piece of paper and dabbed in the wick of the candles while it was still hot. This way I got something that looked kinda like a flame. I added a layer of air drying clay to the eye sockets. After dipping them in a bit of PVA for better adhesion, I stuck the candles into the clay layer. When all this was dry, I used PVA directly from the bottle and put it as best as I could between the candles and also on the side where I imagined the wax would flow down. Then I started work on the altar I wanted for the platform. I cut the tabletop and the underside of the altar and glued both together. I covered the altar in the same texture paste as the rest of the platform. Now the platform was still a bit empty, so I decided to add more candles. This time I used thicker wood sticks to represent thicker candles. But other than that, there was no difference between these and the eye candles. I also attached them the same way I did the previous candles. First adding a small amount of air drying clay, sticking in the candles with a bit of PVA, and after that's dry, applying a coat of PVA over the clay to get a smooth, waxy surface. I also added 2 candles to the altar, and for my bits box I added a ritualistic knife and a small book. Now I could go on to painting. The first steps were made with the airbrush. I based the earthy areas of the piece in brown. With this tone I also shaded the features of the face, while the rest of the face was painted with an off-white. With my black primer I primed the platform in black. Here I made sure to hit every gap because I didn't want any of the cardboard looking through. As the next step I tackled the candles, which I gave a coat of red. After that I went in and painted the platform in a darker grey tone. I followed this by a lighter grey to add the sensation of light coming from above. To add a bit of variety, I added on some spots a bit of brown ink and on some other spots a bit of green ink. I also gave the candles a dusting of a very desaturated and bright yellow as a first step for a simple OSL effect. With that, I went in with a brush. First, I re-established the red of the candles with Gory Red by Vallejo. I also painted all the little flames on the candles white. With Argentine yellow contrast paint, I gave the flames a yellow tint. With lighter and lighter brown tones, I painted the book and its pages. I stippled on a little bit of red paint to simulate red letters and pictures. Here I took the pages of the Necronomicon from Evil Dead as an inspiration. I also washed it with a Vallejo sepia wash. Now as the last step, I dusted the candles with Argentine yellow through the airbrush. This has been a very interesting project. I had this mask laying around for a while now, and I'm happy I found a good use for it. I really like the end product, and it will definitely find its place between the runes I already have. I hope you liked this video. If you do, I would be happy if you could leave a like, a comment, or consider subscribing to the channel. We are almost at 1000 subscribers, and although you might think it's not a lot, I cannot believe that so many of you out there are interested in the stuff I'm making. Thank you very much for that. And of course, thank you for watching. If you liked this one, you may be interested in this tavern build from a few weeks ago. In the next one, we are going to go back to the realm of miniature painting. Until then, farewell, fellow adventurers.